All right, we'll jump into it, but I do have to make one correction. You did a ton of research for that intro, but I'm not the original trail boss.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Hook, Line, and Shifter, brought to you by yours truly, Bob McCarty. As always, I hope everybody's having a great training week out there. I know I am. Next in line for us for big races. Obviously, I just came back from the Cape Epic. Big races for us is getting ready for Nationals sometime in July. I think it's mid-July. As we get closer to that date, I will cover all of the details about what I'm going through with that. But again, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And as always, if you like the channel, please share it and click that subscribe button down in the bottom. It means a lot to me, as well as my sponsors. On the show today, we've got another good one for us this week. I have the Absa Cape Epic Stage 2 and Stage 3. Going to talk to you about all the details of those two stages, everything that myself and Randy went through for that. I have none other than the one, the only, Jeff Lenosky, Trials God. Amazing interview with Jeff, as well as the 25-26 Coconut Cup Series overall results, as well as the day's results. Something actually happened in that overall that I'm quite proud of. I'll get into all of the details of that. But as always, I can't do any of this without my fine sponsors, Orchist Technologies, the leaders in worldwide telecommunications, ESI grips, amazing grips, no numb hands, very popular. Check out probably 80% of the bikes out there, you're going to see ESI grips on them. U-Cycling, YUUcycling.com, amazing clothing. All the clothing that I wear is from U-Cycling. MASH Mobile Vet, I don't have to say anything more about that. Taking your taking your animal to the hospital, very stressful. Let that hospital come directly to your front door. MASH Mobile Vet. Envy wheels, those M5 wheels that are on my race bike, stellar. Can't go wrong with those. Pirelli tires. Check out that new M compound tire, 2.4. No reason to go back down to 2.2, 2.25 these days. Everybody is running 2.4s, much less tire pressure you can run. As a matter of fact, I'm running about 14 in the front, 17 in the rear on my Pirelli tires. And of course, Absolute Black oval chain rings. Check them out. Once you go oval, you'll never go back. And don't forget, please use that discount code HLS 2026 on some of those select websites and get yourself 20% off site-wide. Your toughest competition lives deep within your own two ears. Conquer this, and anything is possible. In the last episode, I talked a little bit about the Cape Epic prologue, as well as Stage 1. Conquering between your two ears. In that episode, I talked about one of the key things that I talked about was every day when I woke up, or we woke up, what we did yesterday was not relevant to today, and what we had to do tomorrow had no bearing on what we were going to do today. The fight wasn't with our competition. The fight was with ourselves. trying to fight those internal demons. My legs are tired. I slept like shit. It's cold. On the Queen stage, you're going to hear me talk a lot about the cold. Didn't really get to me yet. You would think in South Africa that we didn't have to worry about cold. We actually did. It was too cold. Something doesn't feel right on the bike. All of that stuff can be fought up in your head. Your toughest competition is fighting between your two ears, fighting those internal demons. You'd be very surprised at the things you can accomplish when you know how to fight that person. When you think you can't push, give it a shot. See if it's your brain telling you can't or your legs telling you can't. There's a statistic. It's 60-40, 70-30, 80-20. When it comes time for your brain to give up, in some cases you're only 60% of your ability, 50% of your ability, 80-20 rule, 20% of your ability. How do you get better at it? Learning how to fight. When you think it's time to quit, give it more. And you'll probably find out that there is a lot more. There's a lot more to give. Fight what's going on. Fight what's going on up there between your two ears. All right, the Absa Cape Epic. In that first episode, I talked to you about the cost, around $10,000, and I did it on the cheap side. Then we talked about the prologue. So you got prologue in 7 stages. In the prologue, it was from Merendal Winery in Durbanville. Took us 57 minutes, 12.3 miles, 1,400 feet of climbing. Then we moved on from there over to Montague. Montague was actually the first stage. This one took us 4 hours and 48 minutes, 55 miles, 7,036 feet of climbing. This particular stage was, we looped in Montague. In stage 2, it was the exact same thing. We looped in Montague. When I get to stage 3, I'll talk about our destination, or when we actually leave the campsite. So stage two. And by the way, this was actually a pretty significant race for me. And I didn't realize it until I came home and was updating my resume. My full resume and all the races that I've done are available on McCartyTraining.com. You can see every finish from when my career started in 1995 all the way to today. So this stage 2 was actually my 600th mountain bike race. My 600th race. I didn't realize it. Again, once I got home and I started updating my resume, man, 600 races in my career. Am I stopping? Am I slowing down? Nope. Let's keep trying to plug away that up to 700 and beyond. I'm trying. But yes, this particular day was my 600th event. So what did we have to do in stage 2? We left Montague and we returned back to Montague. This for Randy and I was 4 hours and 54 minutes in the saddle, 62 miles, 7,400 feet of climbing. Minimum temperature that day was 68, max was 82. It was actually a pretty nice day. Max speed of 35, average speed of 12.7, and we finished P6. For you Training Peaks people, and we're curious about my personal numbers, that particular day my fitness had bumped up to 141, and my form was still hovering around plus 12. I was still in a pretty good position as far as my form. But fitness, 141. That's pretty good. What did we experience that day? I'll tell you what I experienced. What I learned is this body, I went there at 139 pounds. This body does not like to go downhill on the road. Does not like to go downhill in a group. This stage was so I called it I called it a gravel race. I don't feel like we did a whole lot of true mountain bike racing. It was a gravel race. You wound up in small groups of people throughout the day. But man, I fought. Randy fought really well too, but he's really strong with this gravel stuff. Me, not so much. So what did I learn? I don't like gravel. I would get into the best tuck I possibly could, try and find a pocket somewhere going downhill. Nope. Next thing I know, I start drifting out, turn that cadence way up, try to find another pocket, sit inside it again, get inside the draft. Nope. The only place I was actually pretty good was going uphill. But when you have a pack of people going uphill, I didn't do that well either. So what I learned, I don't like gravel riding. For some of you that know where my training comes from, I spend a hell of a lot of time out on the gravel, but I have no desire to race it. Based on what I experienced on this stage, I can check that box that I really have no desire to race gravel. So we fought really well that day. Like I said, P6, it wound up being a good day. I would say Randy was the strong one that day because I was just hanging on for dear life. On my bike right now, like I've talked about before with Absolute Black, I'm running an oval chainring. I chose to run a 34 tooth chainring. I probably could have ran a 36. 34, and gonna rattle off some numbers, things that won't make sense to some of you and will make sense to some of the rest of you. Our gear ratios in the back, the cassette in the back, the smallest is a 10, the biggest is a 52. So 52 means climbing, really into hard climbing. With my 34 in the front, I didn't find myself up in the 52 a whole lot. If I did, it was very, very brief. So I do believe I probably could have ran a 36. If I was smarter about studying the stage, I probably would have switched my chainring over to a 36 for this stage. So overall, it was a gravel race. Not a whole lot of single track. 7,400 feet of climbing. We still had climbing, but a lot of it was out on fire roads and in a group. So we clicked it off pretty fast. That was it for stage 2. I wish I had something more to share, something more significant, something more exciting, but it wasn't. It was kind of uneventful. I wish there would have been more single track, but that's the nature of the epic. In this particular stage, there was not. So Montague to Montague, we went back to base camp. From there, went to the dining hall, cleaned up, had dinner, slept, and then the next day was a transfer day. So what happens in the Cape Epic is you have 3 different camps that you go to. So even though we have 7 days of racing, we spend 3 days at the first camp. On the 3rd day, you leave, and it's called a transfer day. What happens in a transfer day is you pack up your suitcase. Your suitcase is given to you by the Cape Epic. Everybody has the exact same one. On it is your name and your number. Your number corresponds to your wristband, your tent, everything that you do. So on a transfer day, what you have to do is pack up your entire camp. It can only fit into the one suitcase. You bring the suitcase over to where the trailers are, and they load the trailer up with all the suitcases, and they take them to the next destination. So that would be camp 2. At the end, I'm going to tie just a little bit into what we thought about camp 2, because it kind of sucked. So this is a destination day. So what does a destination day mean? Simply that we left Montague, and we were on our way to Grayton. So Grayton was the town for the next camp. What did this stage throw at us? So stage 3 was 5 hours and 15 minutes for Randy and I. Total of 88 mile transfer that day, and 5,800 feet. Minimum temperature was 68, max was 73. Another pretty good day as far as temperature, not horrible. I don't think we got rained on that day. The Queen stage is the one. Again, I'll talk a little bit about that when I get to stage 5. Don't think it rained on us that day. Max speed, here's the kicker. Max speed 40 miles an hour, average speed 16.8. We finished P8. Again, for you Training Peaks people, now I'm starting to feel it. My fitness is up. 146 was my fitness on that day, and my form was a -9. So everything, the form's really starting to come down, but the fitness is obviously climbing. So what did we experience that day? I didn't realize that when we went into Montague, how much when we left the winery, it was 2 hours away. So we had to drive over. We had a driver take us over to the first camp. I didn't realize how much we actually drove up to where it was at. So this particular day, 5 hours and 15 minutes with 88 miles. I don't know exactly what the number was, but probably the first 20, maybe 25 miles out of town, we were on the highway, roads, screaming downhill. So 40 miles an hour on the road with a pack. We were in the A Corral this day. Pack in the A Corral is 100 people, 50 teams. So you got 100 people screaming down the road 40 miles an hour on mountain bikes through these mountain passes. Sure. Fun? I don't know about that. I was pretty scared at a couple points because you never know. There was one point when I was in the middle of the pack, and I'm thinking to myself, and come to find out now, going 40 miles an hour, I'm thinking, if somebody comes over on me or I cross bars, well, we're not on drop bars, we're on flat bars. If somebody comes across on me right now, I could die. I thought, man, this could be a possibility. We're winding down these mountains. So needless to say, I'm not a fan of that either. I guess what I'm learning as I'm telling you this is I'm a mountain bike guy at heart. Road racing, gravel racing, yeah, I don't think that's for me. So after we finished all this road stuff, we went into single track with a bunch of climbs. Some of the single track climb pretty hard to do. Not necessarily physically demanding, but more of like trials demanding. It's funny I bring up trials because in a minute or two we're going to have Jeff Lenosky on. But trials meaning you got to climb with a lot of confidence to not unclip, not dab, don't put a foot down. You're trying to maintain traction. In a lot of cases, you're in a line of people. And when it comes to taking a switchback turn, a lot of times you almost have to track stand ever so slightly to wait for the trail to get clear so you can surge around a turn, because the last thing you want to do is actually unclip. So single track, super fun. The start of the stage, a lot of this asphalt. Then we went into some country roads. Weather was actually pretty good. Single track was a lot of fun. This was the first experience that I had that I thought was an amazing thing that occurred. We went through, I'm going to call them small towns or small villages, and I apologize to the people from South Africa that I might not be describing it the right way. But we passed through these small towns, and the number of kids that were lining the streets cheering you on, you felt like you were in the Tour de France and you felt like a superstar. They lined up for hours to watch us on mountain bikes come flying through the town. It literally put every pain, everything you were going through, it completely squashed whatever was happening. You wound up with a grin on your face. In some cases, if the speed was right, high-fiving these kids as you go by. But it really felt completely like an amazing, special moment to see these people, especially the kids, lining the streets, just cheering you on. If there's one reason that I would ever go back, and by the way, I said I'm not going back, but if there's one reason that I would ever go back, it would be to experience this again. It is such a heartfelt feeling of joy when you pass through these towns, because you're literally in the middle of nowhere and then you've got hundreds of kids screaming for you on your mountain bike. So other than that, again, not a very eventful stage. A lot of climbing, a lot of single track. On these climbs, we were rewarded with some good single track descents. Again, I'm going to get into that Queen stage, talking about the some of the descents we do there. But generally, if you just climbed, in this case, climbing 6,000 feet, 5,800 feet, you want to be rewarded with something good. Some of the stages, we weren't rewarded with something good. We'd wind up getting over a mountain pass, and shit, one day we had to get off the bike and hike. Another day you wind up just going straight down a gravel road with your teeth jarring, your hands numb, and you're just trying to hang on for dear life. But there was the stages that we actually got up and over these mountain passes and went into some epic man-made, not just going down a Jeep road, man-made single track, switchback berms, jumps, you name it, we were doing it. I had a grin on my face like I was 12 years old again with my friends, jumping stuff on my BMX bike, on my mountain bike when I grew up in New Jersey doing this. I've referred to frequently with the Cape Epic, especially when I did it in 2019, and I backed it up this time. I don't think I have ever flown a bicycle as high or as far as I did on some of these stages. The jumps are groomed absolutely perfect. So if you're willing to leave the ground, the jump is ready, is groomed quite well to get you to do it. So a lot of these downhills, super fun. That actually might be another reason that I would go back. I don't think my wife's going to appreciate this because I told her I'm not going back, and I told all of you that I'm not going back. Yeah, I'm not going back. All right, so this was a transfer day. When we finished up this transfer day, actually, you know what? No, you're right. At the end of this day, the weather was a little bit cold. We transferred over to the next camp. So this is camp number 2. In this case, we referred to this one as dirt camp. Dirt camp meaning the way it was set up, there was a whole lot of dirt, sandy dirt, little patches of grass. The tents were staged really nice. You know, everybody lined up again. Leo, Val, Randy, and myself were completely in line with all of our tents. We wound up every stage or every camp we went to, our tents wound up together. But outside the tent was in some cases dirt. One of the days we actually had a windstorm come through and kind of kicked up the dust and the dirt. It was, I got to be honest, this particular camp wasn't a whole lot of fun. We want groomed grass. The final camp we went to, beautiful. I'll get into the details of that. First stage, it was a destination of 5, and then stage 6 and 7. The food court, the corral, everything we went to, everything there was absolutely perfect. But the nature of the terrain, yeah, we called it dirt camp. The other issue on this particular day is our bags didn't show up. They got tied up in traffic trying to get over, around, through the mountain however they had to. So by the time we got back, there was still, our gear wasn't there. It took about another hour and a half for our gear to come back. So it was a little bit of a hectic night trying to get cleaned up, get your laundry swapped over, get situated in the new camp, dinner, and then trying to get ready for the next day. So at this point we are in Grayton. Those 2 stages in the book. So once again, stage 3, 5 hours and 15 minutes, 88 miles. Stage 2, 4 hours and 54 minutes with 62 miles. In the next episode of Hook, Line, and Shifter, I'm going to cover stage 4 and stage 5. Stage 5 is the one where Randy wound up getting hurt. Weather was horrendous. I wanted to die, but I'll get into all the details. I'll get into all the details about that. All right, like I said, every week I'm going to try and have somebody new on the show, and this week I am so pleased to have none other than Jeff Lenosky. I hope you like the interview with Jeff. All right, and as promised, As promised, we have another guest on Hook, Line, and Shifter. I hinted to it last week that I was going to have this guy on, but man, what a pleasure to have him on. This guy is the man of trials and conquering unrideable trails. He's toured the world showing off his amazing skills. He's held a world record. He stars in some amazing riding videos, is the most talented, and I may add, the tallest guy you'll ever see on a bicycle. He's the original trail boss, but most of all, he's a fellow New Jerseyan. It brings me great pleasure to introduce the one, the only, Jeff Lenosky to Hook, Line, and Shifter. Jeff, thanks for taking your valuable time and coming on my show today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. You can see from the background that you're sitting in your RV right now. As we discussed in the pre-interview, you're out at the Sea Otter doing some great things. We'll touch a little bit into the Sea Otter and what you're doing out there this early, also because the Sea Otter isn't for another two weekends. But Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and share your experiences with the fans.
All right, we'll jump into it, but I do have to make one correction. You did a ton of research for that intro, but I'm not the original trail boss. The original
Really?
trail boss is also an East Coaster, but it's a guy, Robbie Morales, a BMX guy. So Robbie Morales
Okay.
was from Long Island. He was the original trail boss. He had a signature bike from Standard originally, and then he started Fit Bike Company. But Robbie Morales was the trail boss. So when I did start my YouTube series years ago called Trail Boss, it was kind of a little weird thing. I was like, I don't know if I should use that name because Robbie Morales was the trail boss, but we can talk about how that whole came in to be in the
Yeah,
interview.
I
Um,
appreciate you. I appreciate you making that
yeah.
correction for me. I've just always known you as the as
Yeah,
the
unless you're
trail
a
boss.
super old school BMX guy, you might not know that reference. But in case there is, I just want, just want to make that clear.
I have a couple notes to myself to touch into some BMX stuff, so maybe we can get his
Awesome.
name back. We can get his name back into it. So you grew up in New Jersey?
I grew up in New Jersey, and was a product of, I was born in 71. That's when you were born, right? Or you were
72 for me.
72.
Yep.
Yeah, so a year before you. Grew up in New Jersey, so in the early 80s, stumbled across a BMX magazine at a bookstore, which doesn't really exist anymore. Um, but Friday nights we'd go to the mall with my parents, and I went into one of the bookstores and saw a BMX magazine, and I had a bike that had like the gas tank on it and stuff at the time, like a motorcycle replica kind of 20-inch. And I saw that magazine and thought BMX looked kind of cool, so I stripped all those plastic parts off the motorcycle looking bike and tried to make it look like a BMX bike, and eventually got my first BMX bike years later. It was a Schwinn Scrambler,
Oh,
and
Schwinn
went the BMX
Scrambler.
path. So like in the 80s, I was really into BMX. So I'd say fifth grade through ninth in high school, I was
Okay.
all about BMX. And then freshman year, I started to get pretty tall. And BMX bikes were pretty small back then. And I saw Tony Hawk, and Tony Hawk was 6'3" or something. And I figured that might be a better path skateboarding because I
Okay.
was so tall. I figured there was less of a height limit. And back then, skateboarding and BMX were pretty close. There was a bunch of magazines that would have both sports in them at all the time. So the culture was, the same. So I just started skateboarding. I'd still had, the same BMX friends or whatever, but I was skateboarding.
What town?
So
What town did you grow up in?
I grew up in Fairfield. So
And where?
Fairfield was near like Wayne and Parsippany. Like if you've
Okay.
ever watched The Sopranos, it's a lot of those sets were in Fairfield. So like we're
Okay.
talking full on Jersey, like suburban Jersey. That's where I grew up.
Okay.
Yeah. Where
Did
were
you
you
when
from?
Middletown, central
Okay.
central
Yep.
Jersey, right near the coast. I think over this shoulder is some of the trophies from CJ BMX or Central Jersey BMX or
Okay.
Bicycle World in Howell. Did you
In Hell.
ever did you ever race there?
I never made it that far. So I would go to Braddock Raceway, which was in somewhere in Bergen County. There was a racetrack in Pequannock. There was a racetrack in Secaucus.
Okay.
Secaucus, I actually raced on mountain bikes, so that was a little bit later. As a
Okay.
kid, I didn't do a ton of BMX racing. Like
Oh, really?
everything always seemed so far away, and my dad was supportive, but to have him drive you more than like an hour seemed like a monumental task. So I would go to like Braddock Raceway, which was in Bergen County, or Pequannock, which was a real small local track.
Okay. So
So pretty
from that
limited
BMX,
exposure to BMX.
okay, so from that BMX to skateboarding, any how far did you go with skateboarding?
Skateboarding, I love skateboarding. I did a couple contests even. I'd go
Oh,
to my
wow.
parents had a condo at the shore. So
Wait, we
whenever
have
we would
to
go and spend a couple weeks down there, like I just dreamt of that as being California. So
I wanna reference something for you and I will completely understand it, but for the fans out there, I want to reference The Shore. So where Jeff and I's childhood of growing up, we spent from Memorial Day to Labor Day, you spent at The Shore. The
sure, yeah,
Shore was simply every Saturday you were at the beach, Sunday at the beach, whether it was seaside, mostly Seaside Heights. That was the primary place to go. And our generation of growing up, I absolutely love the concept because my parents growing up, we had a beach house. Now, you say in today's day and age, when you had a beach house, you think, oh my God, you grew up with wealth and privilege.
yeah,
The Shore, a beach house to Jeff and I, or your summer beach house, was a shack. It was probably 400, maybe 300 square feet. In some cases, no indoor shower. We had just an outdoor shower, but it was a place that everybody from New Jersey, New York went to during the summer. An average police officer, a fireman, a school teacher could have these beach houses. So
yep,
by no means is there any wealth and privilege when you talk about the shore for guys like Jeff and I. But when
yep,
you know somebody when they're from New Jersey, when they say they used to spend their summers at the shore, I just had to qualify that,
yeah.
Jeff.
Totally. Most of the time, like I'm careful nowadays. Like if I'm talking to friends from California, I'll say, "Oh, I went to the beach."
Uh,
But it just seemed very natural to say to the shore to you because we're
that's
East Coasters and stuff.
that's what we
Um,
grew up with.
so yeah,
Okay.
I would spend my springs practicing all of my skateboard or BMX tricks to get ready for the summer at the shore because that was like going to California.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, back to that. I started doing a couple local skate competitions. I got sponsored by one of the surf shops at the shore. They gave me a sweatshirt. So that was pretty big.
That's big time.
Um, and I was pretty involved with skateboarding up until like junior year of high school. And then I would always work at bike shops as a summer job because I loved BMX. I just felt like I was too tall for it. And that's when mountain biking got popular. So I saw mountain bikes and I thought, wow, it looks like a big giant BMX bike. I didn't
What
really think of
what year was this
that
for
was
mountain biking?
probably I graduated high school in 89, so that had to be 87, 88.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Great.
I got a GT Karakoram. It was a big mountain bike. GT was a BMX brand. It looked like a big BMX bike.
Okay.
And I got that first BMX bike and I just would go to all my skate spots. So rather than try to go ride for distance or anything, I would go to the skate spots and I would try to ride my bike off the same things I'd acid drop off of on my skateboard or
Uh-huh.
same things I ollied over on my skateboard. I'd try to bunny hop over on my mountain bike. And then I'd start going on, shop rides with the guys from the shop, you know, Wednesday nights or whatever, the guys that worked in the bike shop. And I'd always go off the trail and try to hop over a log or something. And he'd be like, come on, Jeff, follow us. Like, we got to go. Um, but there was a guy that worked at the bike shop, Scott Stewart, who turned into like a really good, well, he's a really good mountain biker back in the day. He was one of the original New Jersey state champions at trials. And then he went on to like a pretty good regional road career. So he was a pretty big road racer. Um, but that's one of the people that influenced me to get into mountain bike trials. Other than that, the only experience I had with trials was once in a while in those mountain bike or in those BMX magazines back in the day, since GT had Hans Ray and Haro made a trials bike, you'd see random trials in BMX magazines, but it was always pretty obscure.
Do
Um,
do me a favor and define for a lot of people that might not even know, define trials for me. What
yeah,
exactly is trials?
that's a good point. So back in the day, when when mountain bikes were invented, there was cross country for racing distances, there was downhill for people that wanted to go fast, and there was trials. Trials was the discipline that focused on riding technical terrain, tricky terrain, rough terrain. And it made a lot of sense back in the day, because nowadays trials is so defined and so specific that people build these crazy specific courses to try and challenge riders. But back then, a trials competition for beginners, intermediates, and even experts were literally just hard sections of trail. It
Hmm.
wasn't anything special. You weren't, bringing in all kinds of equipment. You would have a cross country race, and everybody would do their race. And especially in New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania, trials was pretty popular. So if you went to a local cross country race back in the day, most people would race cross country, and then while they were waiting for results and stuff, they'd always have like a little trials competition,
Uh-huh.
and people might, it'd be little tricky sections of the trail, and you just try to make it through without putting your hand or feet down. And there's a time limit, so you just stay in bounds and you ride the course and you try not to make any mistakes.
And this
So
and trials then this was that same bike that you doubled on for racing cross country on Sunday. You simply what
exactly.
slam the seat and try and use that same bike for trials.
Yeah, most people would just ride their regular cross country bike. And then if you really, if you started to become a trials fanatic, you basically would just downsize on a mountain bike. So if I, race cross country on an extra large bike, my trials bike might be a medium frame. So it's just a little
Okay.
bit smaller and easier to maneuver, but they were just traditional, mountain bike frames. There wasn't anything special about them. That
At,
all started to come about, you know, 89 is when I started doing that, like those local competitions. 90, it was probably like 93, 94 is when you started seeing people start to make bikes specifically for trials.
did you ever attempt flatland?
A little bit, because, back when I was into BMX freestyle, my parents wouldn't let me build a ramp. So most of the stuff was either flatland or like the precursor to street riding. So
Okay.
no pegs yet, like no peg grinds or anything like that. But you'd jump over stuff and try to do wall rides and things like that, and flatland. So it was pretty rudimentary back then.
Okay. At what
Yeah.
at what point did you realize that you were pretty good at this trials thing?
So I guess that all started to happen. I got my first mountain bike. I started doing trials on it because that just seemed natural. But then, like any evolution, then eventually I decided to give racing a shot. So I would do, sport cross country races, um, pretty much always sport cross country races. So intermediate class. Um, I would go to do those races, and then, like I said, those trials events would happen at a lot of those events, and I would enter the appropriate class, so like sport class. But then I would look at the experts and start to think, maybe I could do those courses. I thought I had the skills. So then when everybody would leave, I would practice the courses that the experts were riding, and I
Okay.
started to see like I was, pretty proficient at it. So I think around 91 or 92 is when I did like my first trials competition. It was probably 91. I did my first trials competition as an expert and started to do fairly well.
Where was
My
that at?
big that was probably just a local competition in New Jersey, way on to State Park, if you've ever heard of that.
Okay.
There was a state championship there. So I'm pretty sure that
Oh
was it.
wow.
And in the following year, 92, I definitely remember doing trials in the expert class at Hunter Mountain, which was a Norba National.
Okay.
So
I remember
they did
that.
have pro trial, so expert was a step below. So I did expert, which was right below pro.
Okay.
Um, and back then, because I got into it through skateboarding and BMX, I was pretty decent at big moves back then. So like bunny hopping onto stuff, um, bigger, cruder moves. But the real technical things, like if it was ever like a course where you needed to ride over some wet roots or a slippery surface, I was terrible at that. I was kind
Okay.
of good at the big stuff, not necessarily good at the things that take years of experience to practice.
Okay.
So the following year, which was 93, I went to Traverse City, Michigan, which was for the Norba National Championships.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever, if you have any old school people, Traverse City was always kind of like a sort of like an urban national championship. So the cross country course was always like tight knit, similar to how we have courses nowadays. But back then, like a Norba traditional Norba cross country race would just be a big loop. Like they'd go out and do 20 miles, and there wasn't the laps like we
Yep.
see nowadays.
Yeah. I
Traverse
raced
City
I
was always
raced
like a
Traverse.
shorter course.
Yeah, I raced Traverse
So
City, I think in 96 maybe, and it was kind of an eye-opening experience to what it was like, but yeah, it was a long lap. It wasn't these like the pros do now, these 10, 11, 12 minute laps.
yeah,
You were sent out for 50 minutes and maybe two laps.
yeah, and then Traverse City would always throw in jumps on their cross country course. I remember like everybody would watch John Tomac do the jumps and things like that.
Uh-huh.
But for trials, since it was in the sort of near northern Michigan, it was very sandy, so there wasn't rocks and there wasn't logs. So they brought in cement pipes and big tires and cars, and that was the trials competition. So it was really right up my alley. So I entered pro that year and I got first place. And it was just
Ah.
because I was able to do those big crude moves. So I won that first national championship in 93, but then in 94, 95, every other year I mean it's I'm not complaining, but I finished second overall. So I wasn't able to win again. Not that
Do you
seconds
remember
not
do you remember who was getting you? Who
It
was
was
beating
always
you
this
those
guy
years?
Mark Brooks. He was
Okay.
a he was the opposite of me. He was really, really calculated and controlled and awesome at like wet terrain and awesome at that, the really fine movements and the precise stuff. And I was just like the guy that could just do big stuff. So Traverse
Did you
City
have to
suited me.
have to compete directly with Hans, or was he pre your generation?
I used to compete against Hans, but it wasn't until like in 93, 94, 95. Like if we went to Monmouth Mountain, Hans,
Okay.
could beat me all day long. And then I guess around like 2000 was when I could be competitive against pretty much
Okay.
anybody, like, depending on the course, because I was still always better at like, a little bit more urban-y trials. By 2000 and by 99 and 2000, I did start to like, I practiced enough to get good at the real technical natural terrain. But I
Okay.
definitely was always better at like speed trials where you would do trials in a race head to head, or urban stuff, or Mammoth Mountain where they would bring in these big features and build their courses, man-made stuff. I was always a little bit better at that.
Okay.
So yeah.
What kind of bike were you on? I know we're going to lead into your giant career, but what bikes were you on at that point?
So got my first mountain bike. That was a GT. And then I was graduating college in 93 and I won that national championship. And I did that one on an EWR, which was started by Jay DeJesus out of, Eastern Pennsylvania. If you're from Pennsylvania or anywhere in the Northeast, anybody listening will have remembered Eastern Woods Research and Jay DeJesus.
Okay.
Um, so that national championship I won on an Eastern Woods Research because I was going to all the local events, met Jay. And then that was the year I was graduating college, and I was a sports marketing guy in college. So I was like the king of sending out resumes. I didn't know anybody in the bike industry, so I would just print out stacks of resumes all day long and just mail them to every single bike company you could possibly
Print
imagine.
and mail. Print and mail.
Yeah,
You
print and
dated
mail and
yourself.
Xerox, something that
Dated
most people
yourself,
nowadays
Jeff.
don't remember.
Okay.
Like physically licking stamps, putting them on envelopes, mailing them out with a cover letter that like, to people I've never met before.
Okay.
Um, so I would just send resumes to everybody. In 93, I won that national championship. 94, I graduated. I started working full time, and some of those resumes hit. So 94 and 95, I had like every single small sponsor you could possibly imagine. I'd have like a brake cable sponsor, a grip sponsor, a brake sponsor, a saddle sponsor, like 100 different things, just flow, just people giving you free product and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
So 94, made it through that with my own program back in the day. And then 95, I sent a letter to Trek and they offered me, and by that time I was incorporating some downhill racing. So I was doing a little bit more downhill racing too. So I made this resume and it had a Xerox picture of me that like it was literally cut out with scissors and put it on there and make copies of them. And one of the funny things is I would do this at work. So I graduated college and I was working as a production engineer. Um, During college, I worked in a machine shop. So my summer job was no longer in bike shops anymore. I used to work in a machine shop where my dad worked. And it was a big plastics manufacturer and we'd make all kinds of different parts for um, medical equipment and all kinds of weird things. So when I graduated college, they offered me a job as a production engineer. So you would go around the line and just make sure all the parts were being made on time and, all the equipment was working properly.
Okay.
So I would make these resumes and I would Xerox them at work. And one day I like left it on the tray at work and the bosses, I remember him being super pissed because like I'm doing that on company time. So I would send off these resumes to everybody and Trek got back to me and they offered me a sponsorship for racing downhill and trials. I was racing expert
Wow.
downhill and pro trials. And that was in 94 when Trek was really, really a cool brand. Like, I don't, were you mountain biking by then?
Yep.
So they had like the OCLV and the Rocket Boy program,
Uh-huh.
and like Travis Brown was racing for them. It was like a really, really cool brand. And they offered me a frame to do trials on, and
Was it it wasn't one of the Y frames, right?
it was a it was the carbon OCLV bike to do trials, and then a Y bike for downhill.
Nice. Okay.
So that was the offer. So I was like over the moon, ecstatic. I went to the bike shop that I had always worked at, which was a big Schwinn dealer. And I was like, you guys aren't going to believe it. I got sponsored by Trek. This is like the best thing that's ever happened to me, whatever. I was so stoked. And I had sent Schwinn an email, or it's not an email, a physical letter. And I didn't know anybody there. So you're just cold calling. And I remember talking to somebody at Schwinn and they, thanks for the offer. We're not interested, whatever. So I went into the bike shop and told him that how I got this sponsorship offer from Trek and I was going to ride for Trek and it was going to be this life-changing experience. And they're like, have you talked to anybody at Schwinn? Because they were the largest Schwinn dealer on the East Coast. It was
Okay.
Cyclecraft and Parsippany. And I was like, I tried talking to Schwinn, but they weren't interested. So I'm riding for Trek. So the guy RL was like, let me just make a call and see if I can make anything happen. I was like, well, you can try, but I'm riding for Trek. So the next day he calls me and he's like, hey, I talked to the guys from Schwinn and they're willing to offer you two bikes. So I was like,
Okay.
looks like I'm riding for Schwinn. Two bikes is better than one and a half, right? Um, and I just totally took a chance, and it was only because it was a better offer. And now, knowing how the industry works now, I don't think it had anything to do with my resume. I think it was 100% that they were the largest Schwinn dealer, and they were trying to do their Schwinn dealer solid by offering a local ambassador a sponsorship
Okay.
deal.
Okay.
So I got my Schwinns, and I remember like that was at the beginning of the year, and I was super excited. And Schwinn still wasn't like necessarily a cool bike brand yet,
Okay.
but everybody knew Schwinn back then. And that spring in May, the Fibro Bike Tour was going on in New York City, which is a big bike tour that goes through all five boroughs in New York City. And they used to get like 30,000 people. Like it used to be this huge ride.
Oh, wow.
And Schwinn was the title sponsor. So I guess their marketing people flew out to the big event to do it. And Cyclecraft was having a spring sale and I wanted to say thank you. So I offered to do a trials demo at their spring sale just on some picnic tables and random things I could bring together.
Okay.
And it just so happened that after the Fibro Bike Tour, the guys from Schwinn came to the shop to visit their dealer because they're just making a sales call supporting one of their dealers. And they saw me riding, and I guess they thought I was pretty decent. So they're like, "Hey, could we put you in touch with our PR department? I think maybe they can get you on TV or something." And I was like, "Sure." So a few days later, their PR agent called And this was right as Schwinn was going into their 100th year. So it was a perfect storm. I signed up for Schwinn. I wish I could say it was like this big grand plan, but it really was just that they were willing to give me two bikes instead of Trek giving me one and a half,
Uh-huh.
frame and a complete bike. And it was Schwinn's 100th year anniversary. They had a huge media campaign behind it because everybody knew Schwinn back then. All my parents, their friends, like everybody grew up with a Schwinn back when we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
So they had like a PR agency that they spent $1 million on to get them primetime TV slots. So they called and they said, "Hey, we have this opportunity on this network called FX. They have a show called Breakfast Time. Would you want to go into their studio and do some riding?" And I said, "Sure." So I built a couple boxes, put them in the back of my pickup truck, and went to New York City and did my first ever live TV thing. And I wasn't even nervous because I didn't really have much to even think about, and just talked about winning the national championship the year before and Schwinn. It was their 100th year anniversary. So, there's stuff to talk about with that, and hopped on some boxes in the studio and called it a day. And
Wow.
like a week later, they're like, "Hey, can you get off of work to do Regis and Kathy Lee?" And I was like, "Sure." So then next thing you know, I was on Regis and Kathy Lee, and then that went well. And a few weeks later, I did the CBS Early Show. And then a few weeks later, I did the Today Show, like all within the first few months while working a full-time job,
Wow.
asking like, "Hey, can I have off Tuesday? I got to go into the city to do the Today Show." Um,
We talk about the concept of sliding doors. Sliding doors mean if you went one way with your life or you went another way with your life. You made a decision because Schwinn said, "Here's two bicycles," as opposed to
yep,
Trek saying, "Here's one and a half." And to me, that's clearly a sliding
it
door
was
decision
it
that
was a
has led
total
you to
sliding
this
door.
life.
It really was.
Good
I
for
think that was
you.
a pivotal moment that really, really shaped the trajectory because it gave me the opportunity to do a lot of the PR stuff early on and get comfortable doing it. Schwinn had a PR agency. Like if I rode for Trek, um, they weren't spending money like that on PR because they didn't have the 100-year message and all that kind of stuff. Schwinn was doing a brand overhaul. So then during that era from 95 to 2000, when I stopped riding for them, they really were like the big brand doing a lot of marketing in the bike industry and stuff like that. So then that gave me the opportunity to do a lot of like demonstrations at Interbike when it was in Las Vegas. All the different Interbike shows. They were spending so much money on marketing, and I was the mountain biker that was able to perform, in a small environment, and that was pre YouTube, pre any of that kind of stuff. So if you wanted to see somebody demonstrate mountain biking, like
You had
live in a parking lot was really the only way to do it,
you
other
had to
than
go
go to
out.
like an urban national.
All right.
Um, so it really was it was the perfect storm. It really
At,
was.
at what point did you leave your, I'm assuming at a certain point you decided to leave your full-time job at the plastics company and go
Yep.
out and do
So
this?
yeah, so I started riding, so I got that grassroots deal in January, and then by I think June it was going pretty well with all these PR things, and they offered to give me a retainer. So they offered to start paying me $500 a month. And
Wow.
I was like,
Okay.
at $500 a month and travel to events, like, sure. I was living at home still. I had a
Yeah.
full-time job, so it's just $500 of gravy. I figured, sure, why not? Um, the tough part came was the first year that I graduated, I took that job and I got consistent raises. So I was thinking, man, if this keeps up, sky's the limit with my job, my full-time job. But then the second year is when I got on Schwinn, and then they started giving me money, and then I started getting cost of living raises. So then I was like, maybe the job's not all it's cracked up to be. Like 1% isn't as good as the year before. I got like a 20% raise 6 months in, and then a 10% raise 6 months after that. So I was like, at this
Okay.
rate, this is going to be awesome. And then the next year went down to 1%, and then Schwinn started giving me $500 a month. So then I was like, huh, maybe there is a possibility that I can make this a full-time job. And I was
Did
starting to get some notoriety in the bike world, and things were going good with Schwinn. So my negotiating with Schwinn literally was, you know, obviously I put together another Xerox resume, but I just said, hey, if I didn't have to go to work every day, I could probably do more stuff.
uh-huh.
And most of the trials demos back then were people would bring in junk cars or spools or whatever. And as a kid growing up watching freestyle demos, I remember like people coming to town with these ramp setups and branded
Yep.
trailers and GT and Mongoose and everything.
Yep.
And I was like, that would be awesome to do the same thing for trials. So I pitched Schwinn on that idea, like going to Schwinn, going to their dealers, touring around, doing a live show. And, nobody had ever done that yet for trials. So I was like, I'll buy the trailer. And
Wow.
well, I offered to buy the trailer, and then they offered to match half of my salary. And then next thing you know, you're a touring band. So I would go to every bike shop I could possibly hit up. Hey, you're having a sale this weekend? I'll come with my setup, sound system, trial, demos, and it's $500. And they're like, sure.
Okay.
So I used to spend hundreds of days a year on the road, just like a touring band, going from bike shop to bike shop to bike shop, $500 for a demo, set up all the stuff, perform live for them. People would have sales. And at the end of the year, um, I had exceeded what I was making at my old job, and it started a 5-year run with Schwinn. And
Did you as a young guy, or as you were coming through the ranks in this, did you ever truly seek out to make a career, or has a career at this, or has it always just been a passion of yours that you've somehow been able to navigate through and create a career? And the reason I ask that, and I think our generation as opposed to new generation is a little bit different. I think if you're probably going to answer it the way that I think, but I think when you're young and you say, "Oh, I'm going to make a living racing a bike," or doing trials or downhill, it doesn't. I don't think the focus is in the right place. I would assume that you really just loved riding your bike, and somehow through all of these trials and tribulations, found a way to make a career out of it. Is that correct?
yeah, I always have loved riding my bike, but I definitely looked at the sport a lot differently than a lot of my colleagues. So
Okay.
back then, if you were a cross country racer or a downhill racer and you got on the podium, it was very obvious to all those brands that I'm missing out. I need to have one of those guys on the podium in order to get my brand represented. Trials was totally different. At the events, people would follow us around like, it was a really good spectator sport at the events, but there was never any coverage, whether it be on race coverage on TV, magazine coverage. They didn't cover trials. So I saw a big opportunity to use trials as a vehicle to go to places where people want to learn about mountain bikes, see mountain bikes, whatever, and use it as an opportunity to perform. So a
Okay.
lot of my trials competitors, they would look at, I went to Mammoth Mountain this weekend and I got first place. My job is over. And I would win a national championship or get second place or do whatever and go, all right, now I need to use that as something to leverage to call
Right.
bike shops on Monday and say, hey, I finished first place national championship. Would you like me to come to your store and do all that stuff? And then I started that tour, and I really used the mountain bike demos as the backbone of why a company should sponsor me.
Why
Not
why
the
did you
competition. The competition validates it, but being able to go to dealers and events and perform with their logos on, that was the value for the brands.
did your degree in sports marketing, you think, help form or help create this brain that you have about how to try and succeed in the sport?
I think growing up as a kid, going to those freestyle shows, watching how they perform their business and thinking of how impactful it was to me, gave me the inspiration. And then, obviously going to college, getting a degree gives you some tools, but you're kind of creating a new thing. So I think it helps you write better letters than if I had not gone to college, or understand marketing a little bit better than had I not. But you really were like kind of creating a new thing. Like I really was like the first rider to get a trailer, put obstacles in it, put people's branding on it, and tour the country and do those demos. Um,
Okay.
and for another sliding door moment, it was also a pivotal thing when I was trying to negotiate with Schwinn. Originally, I did offer them. They had a freestyle team, and I did offer for them to buy the trailer, and they were a little skeptical, and I thought that it was going to work, so I decided to take a chance on myself. So I bought the trailer and owned the system, owned the whole thing, and then pitched them on the idea of like, and I was thinking like I did just go to college, I might as well use my education for something. So they had a full-time employee in-house that would book freestyle shows. And I said, if you just give me the dealer list, I'll handle all the collateral material and I'll book my own shows. So it's
Okay.
completely turnkey for you. All I need is a salary. So that really did put me in the driver's seat, because then in 2000, Schwinn was killing it, but they acquired Yeti, they acquired GT with a lot of debt, and they ended up going bankrupt. Not really because of what Schwinn did, but because of bringing on these other companies, assuming debt, whatever. So Schwinn went bankrupt. So I remember I had a 9-month-old son. I was on top of the world with Schwinn and got a call one day that they're bankrupt, and if you're a sponsored rider, you're 1099. There's no unemployment, there's no anything. You're just done. So Schwinn going bankrupt, leaving the bike industry, leaving all those dealers, created a vacuum, and Trek and Giant were very aggressive with trying to get their foot in the door at those dealers. So the sliding door moment for that is that I own the trailer and I own the system. So I was able to just pitch that turnkey solution to Trek, Giant, all these other brands, where I already own everything. You don't have to invest in anything, and it's already a proven program. We just need to put Giant on the side of the trailer or put Trek on the side of the trailer or specialize, and we could just hit the ground running because Schwinn's gone, and all these new dealers, if they're going to bring in Giant now to fill that spot, or they're going to bring in Trek to fill that vacancy, they want to get a little pizzazz going and some promotions and stuff. So I talked to a bunch of different brands. The two biggest offers, I actually got offered quite a bit more money, but it was a much, much, much smaller brand than Giant. But Giant had, I think at the time, like 2,000 dealers around the country.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
my mindset was, if I have 2,000 dealers, I can ask if they want demonstrations for X amount of dollars. My earning potential and ability to do more stuff is way higher than the smaller brand with, probably 100 dealers around the country. So that's how I ended up on Giant, was
Okay.
because Giant was manufacturing all the Schwinn's bikes. They lost that business. They wanted to get into the US market. They wanted to be aggressive. And I was able to provide them a turnkey solution to just do a demo program for them.
So taking Schwinn off your trailer,
Just
off
took the
your
red
van,
trailer,
everything,
painted
and
it blue, and put
put
Giant on the
Giant
side.
on it and
Yep.
hit the road.
It's
So that
literally
was
exactly what happened.
that was in 2000, you said?
That was 2001. That was
2001. And what
2001.
year you did that for? You did that for how many years?
So then I rode for Giant for 17 years.
Wow. Doing
And
this touring stuff.
so pretty much when I first got on, all touring, and and I always mountain biked. Like, I was always a mountain biker, but everybody just knew me as a trials guy. So I kind of was a little pigeonholed, a little bit. Um, and then I guess it was, well, it must have been 15 years ago, because my son was just about to be born. I broke my leg. So I couldn't do any trials, but that was at like the height of the free ride trials, demos, all that kind of stuff.
How
I
did you
broke
break
my
your leg?
leg.
How did you do
Um,
it?
well, at the time, I told everybody I was on my bike, but now it's common knowledge. I was riding one of the little mini bikes, like a KLX 110.
Okay.
Um, so back then, like, I had all the dirt jumps in my backyard and all these crazy North Shore stunts and ladder bridges and everything. And we were just dumb and mid 30s. We would take the motorcycle on all those stunts. Anything I built for my bike, I would ride the 110 on. So there was
Okay.
one winter day when my good friend Aaron Chase, who's also like a pretty well known mountain biker, free rider, he got this metal ramp setup from Red Bull. It was a portable ramp setup, and it was February in New Jersey. It was unseasonably warm, so we decided to hit this new metal ramp setup. And we put it on the grass, and we were hitting it, and it was so long ago. It was when Instagram was just getting started. There was an app called Hipstamatic, but it was like the same thing where you post pictures on.
Okay.
So I remember like we're hitting the ramp and everything was great, but it was starting to get a little bit wet. And Aaron hit it and I took a picture of him and I was like, man, that's the sickest picture I've ever seen. Take a picture of me. So I went to hit the ramp and I just gave it a little bit extra throttle to get an extra sweet picture. And I ended up peeling out going up the metal lip, so I lost traction. And you just ditch the bike and jump over the handlebars, but I didn't make it to the landing. I landed on the landing on my shins, and then the bike hit my ankles and snapped my tib fib.
Wow. Okay.
So it was a pretty bad injury. Like it was a really bad injury. And I can go on a whole tangent about that, but I had to have two surgeries. And fortunately, the second surgery was great and it fixed it and it was perfect. But it was a little touch and go there for a second.
And that
Um,
what year was that again?
that was 2000, probably 2010, because it was right when my son Max was born.
Okay. And
Um,
then you went still touring the country till 2017?
yeah, that healed and that bounced back. But I guess
Okay.
the point was, um, that was when I was like one of the top athletes on Fox at the time, but it was mainly for trials and street riding. And I always mountain biked, but I was already starting to get a little bit older for the free ride scene. And I always thought it was kind of lame when some of my colleagues would like stop hucking off Rampage cliffs and they just trail ride, or whatever. I always thought that was kind of lame. So now I'm in the same situation. I'm recovering from a broken leg. I got to do a Fox photo shoot, and they're like, "Well, do you want to just trail ride?" And I was like, "Crap! I've always said that's kind of lame." And I was like, "Well, if I'm gonna be on a trail bike, I should race it." So that's what kicked off my enduro stint. So from like 2015 to 2020 or something,
Okay.
like 2018. And when you and I met, like I was racing cross country, but a lot of that was just training for enduro. Like
Okay.
I dabbled in cross country, but I was always 6'4", and like I think the lightest I ever got was 200. So like cross country I did for fun, and I did kind of, I was always competitive, but like that was cross training for enduro racing.
Okay.
Because I figured if I'm going to be on a trail bike in a magazine, I should at least race and back it up. So that's where my enduro stint came from. So that was like
Okay.
the early days of enduro racing. So I would do enduros, but then I kept doing the trials demos. The trials demos were always like the backbone. And like if I had contracts with brands and stuff like that, it was always focused around branding on the trailer, how many events I'd go to, all that kind of stuff. And then if I raced enduro, if I won or lost or whatever, it didn't really matter. I was just doing that for fun on the side. I was never like in a sponsored enduro racer.
Right.
I had all that free time, so I trained like a pro, but my real job was doing the trials demos.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
And
the
then
uh the the so Giant, you were with them until 2018 or 2019 doing the demos?
I guess it was 2018 now. And
Okay.
I thought that job would never end because a lot of the bike brands back then, Trek was buying a lot of bike shops. Specialized was buying a lot of bike shops, and Giant's business model was doing GRP stores, Giant Retail Partners. So if you've ever walked into like a Giant store 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they all had a similar look and feel, and that was like their game plan back then. Was it's like an Apple store or something where if you walk in a Giant store in Colorado or California, like it has a familiar feel. Same color palettes, they want 90% of your floor space,
Right.
whatever. So when these shops would sign on to become a GRP dealer, then one of the deliverables from Giant was that they'd, once the store's built and they're ready to open, they would have a big grand opening sale, and they would send out one of their athletes, which would be me, and I would do trials demos at those shops. And in
Okay.
practice, it was pretty cool. And I met a lot of really awesome dealers, but I would say that a lot of times the demos weren't that great because a lot of times with that business model, it wasn't like Bob, longtime cyclist from Fort or Miami. Are you from Fort Lauderdale or Miami?
Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. Like if you opened a bike shop in Fort Lauderdale, the whole entire cycling community knows you, and you're going to have probably the coolest grand opening of all time. But with this business model, it was like the guy was like maybe like a banker and he just decided to get out of it and wants to open his first bike shop. It was like too turnkey, and it wasn't always like passionate cyclists. That's not everybody. I met a lot of awesome bike shops, but you'd go to a lot of them where like it'd be like a couple family members and not like the cycling community just wouldn't show up for them as much.
Okay.
So it was like kind of cool, but it wasn't always cool. And I was doing like 40 of those a year. So 40 weekends a year. Like it was driving me crazy.
So
Um,
did you have at this point in your career, did you have a driver that was driving your rig out and you flew out, or were you behind that steering wheel every weekend? And if
no,
so,
so
how did
with,
you balance
so then that was
family?
the other, so that was, yeah. So back then I would fly into a dealer like on a Thursday. I'd go to Home Depot. I'd buy a couple $100 worth of plywood, and I had a system set up of like a small setup that I would do. So I would fly in, I'd build my stuff on a Friday, I'd do my demo on a Saturday, I'd get back on a plane Sunday and fly home. And then the next weekend I would do the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. So I thought the job would never end. I wasn't like super stoked with what I was doing professionally because it was a grind. But then all those events that you travel to, it's not only your salary, but then it's also your travel cost and whatever. So like your number on a spreadsheet gets pretty big. And I wasn't happy and I wasn't fulfilled doing it, but it was a good job and it was keeping the lights on. So I was like, I guess I'm just going to keep doing this until one day in October, I got a phone call that they're not renewing my contract. And I was like, holy shit, I never saw that coming, like ever,
Wow.
ever. Because I thought like they're going to open dealers forever. Like, I guess I'm going to be the guy going to them. And it really was like the push that I needed because sometimes, like, with everything in life, like you might have a great job that you're not passionate about, but if it's good money or whatever, like it's hard to leave. So
Right.
I got forced to leave. And at the time I was probably 48 or whatever,
Wow.
something.
Okay.
And I was like, huh, this is going to be weird to start finding new partners now. Like if Giant doesn't want me, maybe nobody does. Like maybe that's it. Might be time to
Uh-huh.
call it a career. And I started talking to most of the big brands like Specialized and Trek and Canyon. And I was pretty surprised at the time. Like people were interested. So that was kind of good. Like, cause you get dropped by a company, like it's not the greatest thing for your ego. Um, so that made me feel good. But then I was like, some of those brands, it might be a good, you know, FU
All
to
right.
Giant. Like, I'm going to go ride for Specialized now. But then you're like, but that might last 2 years. And also, I did realize, like, at Giant, I I gained a lot of stuff from them. I met a lot of friends at Giant. They did a lot of good things for my career. But I spent 17 years marketing somebody else's stuff,
Right.
and it's gone. Like, it's just gone. Like,
Once
I don't have anything to show for it.
Right.
You
Once
know?
again, this is another one of those things. I think it's the evolution and the path of your career. So
Yeah.
now now we're getting into what's going on these
Current
days.
day. Yeah.
You're with Reeb Cycles.
I'm with Reeb Cycles. So
Tell
yeah,
me a little bit about them.
after that whole thing, like I said, I sat back and I was like, I spent 17 years marketing somebody else's stuff and it's just gone in the blink of an eye. I don't want to do that again. So I started talking to a bunch of different bike brands, and I was riding for Oscar Blues at the time because they were a sponsor of my YouTube series. Oscar Blues is a big brewery that was founded by the founder of Reeb. They do Dale's Pale Ale, which a lot of people have seen or whatever. So Oscar Blues was a big brewery that I was writing for, and Oscar Blues had Candade, which was the nonprofit that I do a lot of work with. So Candade was founded by Oscar Blues. Since bike riding and music are such a big part of the beer culture and Oscar Blues, a lot of their donations and contributions go to music related stuff or bike related stuff or art related stuff, and it's all aimed at kids. So
Okay.
Candid goes into schools and donates art equipment, or they'll donate musical equipment, and they donate bikes. So I went to the first ever Candid bike donation while I was still riding for Giant, actually. And we donated 100 bikes to kids. And then we saw that we can grow this program. And coming with from my trials background and stuff and the ability to perform for, audiences and everything, it was great. You go into a school, you do an assembly, ride around for the kids a little bit, and then do like a big reveal, and everybody's going home with 100 bikes,
Hmm.
a bike for every student. So I started that program with Candid. And so when I left Giant, I was looking for new bike sponsors, and Oscar Blues did have Reeb, and I knew some of the Reeb guys, but it was always like a really, really, really small brand, like 100 bikes a year brand. Everything handcrafted in Colorado, um, everything built, you know, custom stuff and whatever. And the woman who was running Candid said, "Hey, like, did you ever consider riding for Reeb?" And I was like, that would be the coolest thing ever, because I thought back to when I was a kid skateboarding and punk rock, and like it's
Uh-huh.
the antithesis of, like, I just came from riding from the largest bike brand in the world to arguably one of the smallest. And I was like, but I just don't see how that would work, because I got 3 kids, and like this kind of, like, I love riding bikes, but it does need to be a job.
Right. Still got
And
to pay the bills.
I still got to pay the bills if I'm gonna, do it. And she was like, well, why don't you talk to Dale and see? And at the time, we figured I was already riding for Oscar Blues. I was doing a lot of stuff with Candid. I could do more stuff with Candid, because that was the other thing with doing so much, all those stuff for Giant. I wasn't able to do a lot of stuff for Candid. And that's really where my heart was. Like, I started doing all this stuff for Candid. You can go into a community and give kids free bikes and get them outside and active, or go to some other guy who decided to open a bike shop with a turnkey solution because he just quit his job as like something, and
Right.
that's just an investment. So like, that's where my heart is. That's what I want to do.
Seems very fulfilling.
Um, yeah. So Dale said, hey, Reeb couldn't really afford to do it, but 1 plus 1 plus 1 doesn't have to equal 3. Maybe it equals 4,
Okay.
and you get more involved. And then, like, it started early on, like when we were going to announce that I was riding for Reeb. um we talked about, like, how are we going to get it on Pink Bike, or how would we get it on Vital? And I was like, well, those are my friends. I could just send them the press release. So I was
Just
like, I
send a
guess
phone call.
I'll start helping with PR, a little bit or whatever. Um, so then I started to see, like, there's a lot more I could do other than just riding for them. So for the first 3 or 4 years, I was pretty much like a rider, but in that time it was pretty much YouTube and group rides that were my big deliverables for Reeb and the way I would get exposure. But then I did start to help out with marketing a little bit, or PR, just, you know, lightly on the side. And then now, over the past 2 years, I'm the full-time brand manager. And so I still go to all the events, and I still promote Reeb, and I still do stuff on social media. But brand manager is a very loose term, because I do way beyond that. We're a pretty small team. So basically, I work on new product development. I do all of our merch lines. I do all of our, well, we have a team that we contract with, but I handle all the marketing, and just trying to make Reeb stable and try to grow it, which is a weird time in industry to try to do that. But so far, we've been having some pretty decent success.
It sounds like you're the based on the evolution of your career and where you're at today, it sounds like you're the perfect person to do this. Let's
That was
touch
that's another sliding door moment, because
uh,
Dale has been awesome with giving me the opportunity to try to make all these decisions and try to, steer the brand. But if I was riding for Canyon or Specialized or whatever, nobody's going to give a former rider that chance first try. You'd like really have to work your way up the ladder to do that, and that could take years. And with Reeb, we're a small enough team. I just got thrown into the fire, and there's awesome guys in the shop that I work with, and we have a great little team. But I'm figuring shit out, that I'm figuring it out, where I probably wouldn't have gotten that with a huge brand. And you just use your gut and your years of instinct and what you've learned in the bike industry. And it's a really fun. I'm learning a lot. And I feel like we're making an impact on the brand, so it's good.
Excellent. If anybody has the opportunity, check out Reeb Cycles.
Yeah,
I've seen Jeff I've seen you, Jeff, from the beginning of the development into the bikes. They definitely look like pretty cool rides. So couple things I wanna close with. I know we got to get you going to your next interview out at the Sea Otter. Um, how does anybody follow you? What are your handles across the board? And then we're going to touch just real quick into your YouTube channel where I said the Trail Boss. You told me you're not the you're
yeah.
not the you're not the original. I've watched a lot of your videos. It's definitely some cool shit you tackle. But how does anybody follow you? And then tell me or tell the fans a little bit about Trail Boss.
Okay. We don't have to make it too short. I feel like I've talked the entire time and you haven't even gotten to answer any questions yet. So we do have to at least give you a speed round.
Okay.
Um, every time I do these things, I always realize I'm like, damn, I've done that a really long time. I could just like blabber on and on and on and on forever. I
Perfectly
really
fine.
like watching this skateboard podcast called the Nines Podcast. And they had Mike Vallely on, which is also a New Jersey skateboarder. And he did a 5 hour podcast
Really?
because he's our age and he's
Okay.
in skateboarding and he was a very influential skateboarder from Edison. And he did a 5 hour podcast and there was still stuff to talk about. And I listened to the whole thing on a drive and it never got boring. It was crazy. So then I'm like, I guess when you do things for 30, 35 years, like
I,
you could just babble on forever. And it's like,
I
which
was
direction do you want to go?
I'm
Um,
listening to all your stories and the questions that I'm trying to hit you with, and I try to put myself sometimes on the receiving end, and I think the exact same thing, man. I've been 33 years I've been into this racing mountain bikes, and then like I said back here with the trophy at BMX World, it was 1979 when I started that. So
wow.
God, there's got to be a lot of stories in there. So I
Yeah.
uh, I appreciate you sharing as much as you could. And by all means, at any point, I'd love to have you back on to get deeper into things. But
That'd be
again,
awesome.
tell me how people can follow you and Trail
Maybe
Boss.
we have people comment on like which turn you want to make.
Right, what I can
You go
elaborate
left
on.
or right. So if people want to follow me, Instagram, it's just at Jeff Lenosky. You could also look at Reeb Cycles because I'm probably posting on that too. My YouTube channel is Jeff Lenosky Trail Boss, and it's Lenosky. And then the story behind the YouTube channel is, um, I grew up riding live demonstrations, right? And then as I got started to, you know, that was towards the end of I did YouTube for like a couple years when I was on Giant, but YouTube was getting popular. The demos were kind of fizzling out because like I said, I was going into every single shop. Like I would go in on a Thursday, build something on a Friday, and then do a demo on a Saturday with just a makeshift thing and then fly out on a Sunday. So that was also like this inflection point where YouTube was getting pretty popular. Um, One of the reasons I stopped filming for the big budget mountain bike films that I was in. So if anybody wants to see like any of that old school stuff, there was a big series called New World Disorder. And I shot on those as long as they were still shot on film. So every single one of those videos was shot on actual film, which is
Wow.
crazy how that was. Because it's just like so much more production and everything. And it's very expensive for them to shoot and everything. So the last video I shot was New World Disorder 8, and I would only get a week with the filmer. We're going off tangent again, but I would get a week with the filmer because these would be year-long productions and they could only send somebody to go to New Jersey or wherever we were going to, dedicate so much time to us. So we would usually get a week. And in the early movies, like 2, 3, 4, 5, we would fly to Amsterdam or Germany or whatever and just land, scout, and shoot an entire segment in a week. Because the level of riding wasn't so high that you can totally do that and it would be good enough. But then if you look at those video series, once you got to like 6, 7, 8, the level of riding was getting so high. YouTube was getting popular. We were shooting videos on film, so we would get a week worth of film, and you were trying to compete against guys that would shoot on digital cameras over the course of a year, and then they'd take their best footage from a year and put it into a 3-minute segment, and then we would take what we could do in a week and put it into a 3 minute segment. And it started to get to the point where like I can't fly into Germany and find enough shit in a week to
Right.
make a good segment. So if you look at those videos, the last two that I did, 7 and 8, were pretty much all around New York, New Jersey, because it would be stuff that I'd scout for the entire year
I see.
and like make a game plan, and then they would come out and shoot it. And the last video that I shot was in 2008, and I'm pretty sure the Danny McCaskill's viral video came out in around 2008. And I was like, I felt like I put out the best product I possibly could at the time. And then Danny's is amazing, and I'm like, he's got all year to do this. This model doesn't really work for what we're trying to do. Like you can't represent it in a week.
Right.
So that's kind of like that was like the inflection point. Like Danny's video almost was kind of like one of the reasons I was like, it doesn't make sense to do this. I shot the best video I could possibly do. I don't think I could do that again. So next year, give the spot to somebody else because
Right.
I think I'm
And
out.
he had Red Bull. He had Red Bull money to try
Yeah,
and
Red Bull
do
money,
all
all that
this
other stuff.
also.
But I still did want to do a video series. So my original thought was I want to do a trials video series. But then I was like, how are you going to do something every single month? Like when there's just this constant bombardment. So that didn't seem sustainable. And since I was racing enduro and I was still doing trials demos, it started to become pretty common to like I'd go to do a trials demo and you know Colorado, wherever, and people would watch me hop on boxes, and then they'd see me in magazines because then I was like being a little bit more known for mountain biking, not just trials. And they'd always say like, "I got the trail for you. There's a trail, at this park down the road. I've never seen anybody clear."
Right. Nobody can go up that.
And so that started to like resonate. I used to think like that'd be pretty cool. And then the tipping point was I was in Indianapolis for the second year in a row. This woman put on a Super D race in Brown County, Indiana, and I was at Bicycle Garage Indy. And for the second year in a row, she's like, "When are you going to get down to Brown County? There's a trail there that's impossible. I've never seen anybody ride it." And as a mountain bike snob, I didn't say this, but I'm thinking like, it's Indiana. How hard could this trail possibly be?
Right.
Like, not going to be that hard. So I had that in the back of my mind, and then I needed to I was working for Mavic also as a community manager. So they would send me products, and I'd go out with editors and try to get them on new stuff. And there was an editor that lived in Southwest Ohio, and I was going to drive out to meet him and get him on these new Mavic wheels. And I was like, where's there a good place to ride? And he's like, well, if you want to drive a little bit, there's a place by me called Brown County, or uh, I think it's Brown County. I forget what the park's name is, but it's a trail called Schooner's Trace. And he's like, we can go ride at Brown County and whatever. And I was like, ooh, that's where that trail Schooner's Trace is. That's perfect. I've heard about it. I'll come out there and we'll go ride that. And I went out there, it rained. It was the most impossible trail I've ever ridden. I've never crashed so much in my life. The limestone gets slick. It was like riding a technical ice rink. So then I was like, holy crap, maybe there's something to this. If I want to do a video series, maybe the hook is I go and ride these unrideable trails. Because by that time I
Okay.
had like a small list on my uh, plate. Like I knew about like National Trail in Arizona, and I knew about some other. Um, can you hear that?
Yeah, I hear some beeping.
Okay,
It's all
all
right.
right,
You're still there. We're good.
all right. So I had like a collection of like 6 trails in on my mind. So I was like, well, I'm gonna make that'll be my video series. I'll go around to different trails, show people how to ride them, give them some tips, and it's a start and a finish. You put a little nice bow on it. Like if you're just doing a street riding video or there's no storyline, which is a trail, I'm always going to be like, well, the video's not done yet. I got to do another bunny hop or something. But if you just ride the trail, it's a start and a finish and
Yeah.
whatever. So that was the idea for the video series because I wanted to do something on YouTube. And I was like, I needed to come up with a name. And I was like, how about Trail Tamers? Something tech, whatever. And one of the guys from Giant that I'm friends with on was like, how about Trail Boss? And I was like, I don't know, there's already a Trail Boss. There's Robbie Morales. He's the trail boss because BMX, when you ride dirt jumps, they're called trails. So Robbio's the trail boss, like dirt jump trails.
Okay.
And then I thought about it and I was like, I don't know if it really matters. And then I was also like, I don't want people to think I'm like being like arrogant, like I'm the trail boss. So the original copy or whatever, or like pitch was um like with the proper skills and information, anything's possible, but one slip up and Mother Nature will remind you who's in charge.
All right.
That was like the
Okay.
idea behind Trail Boss. Like I'm going to show you, and then now you go do it. Not like I'm the Trail Boss, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that first video, then you start riding down the trail, and people are like, "What's up, Trail Boss? What's up, Trail Boss?" It's like that's not what I meant, but it is kind of
But
cool.
it just
Um,
sticks.
so that was the idea behind Trail Boss. And then I did that. So if you ever followed the series, like the first year, it was every month or every 2 months a new video. So I did 6 a year. But then as YouTube evolves, and you got to feed the machine. So then it's like now you got to do one every month, and then every month's not good enough. You got to do one every week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then I was like, well, how am I going to fill all this space? Well, it doesn't have to be riding an impossible trail. It could be riding with Bob, or riding with my friend Dave or whatever. Like we're just going to show you new trails.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then because of the nature of the content, then you'd always get DMs and emails like that was really cool, but I'd like to learn how to do it. You ever do
Right.
instruction? And this is like another glass sliding door moment, maybe. It's never even occurred to me. But because I started riding trials, and a lot of that was I was living in New Jersey watching guys in California and Europe do it. So like I did have to like really analyze the technique and figure out what they were doing and then teach it to myself. And then I kind of taught it to my two friends, Lance Trappy and Chris Clark. Like I really had a good mind for that. And like I said, I was a sports marketing guy, but the major was actually in movement and sports studies in college. So when I first went to college, I went to go for athletic training. So I did kinesiology, I did a bunch of movement and sport courses, and then my sophomore year, my grades were like okay in like some of the uh like once we got into like anatomy and physiology and stuff, like I wasn't really doing so great, but I was always really into like kinesiology and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I pivoted to marketing, but it still was under that movement and sports studies umbrella. So flash forward 30 years when I started to get into coaching, it never even occurred to me. Somebody wrote a bio about me and they're like, "Oh, he's been coaching for 5 years and he even has a degree in movement and sports studies." And I was like, I never even thought that that would come back into the equation, but it really
Yeah.
did, because then I realized like I guess I either like breaking down movements because of the kinesiology, or I have the kinesiology because I like breaking down movements or whatever. But I do have a pretty decent understanding about what's happening when you're doing movements on a bike.
The
So that
reason
led into the how to's, and then that led into the in-person coaching.
the reason I'm grinning with that is I went to school in South Jersey, Glassboro State, or it changed to Rowan University, but I got
Yep.
a degree in mechanical engineering. And I always tell people, I'm like, I don't think I've ever used my degree. I've always kind of been in this cycling thing, and I, like you, I found a way to navigate through the system and create a career out of it. But once I started coaching myself, doing skills coaching, now fitness coaching, and this is 15 or 17 years ago, I realized just how much my degree actually came into play.
Yeah.
And for me, much like you with movement, I've been accused of when I ride through a trail, it's like the Matrix to me, where I see formulas and calculations and lean angles and tire pressures and rubber compound and
Yeah.
body movement. And I'm making split second decisions, which come to find out was actually part of where my degree actually came from, of all this engineering mechanical calculations of things.
Yeah.
So it's super, super interesting to me to hear the entire path of your career. And at this point, now a little over an hour of getting to know you, you can definitely clearly see who you are and why you're in the position that you are today. It wasn't that you just woke up and now all of a sudden you're the Jeff Lenosky that you are today.
Yeah.
So it's super, super cool. Let me ask you one other thing. I touched in the beginning that you were a world record holder for
Yep.
something.
Yep.
Share with the fans what that was. And I know you had a chance at one of our Gone Riding banquets to speak. To talk to us at the end of the year and
Yeah.
share your experiences. And I brought up your world record. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So that was in, I was still on Schwinn. I think that might have been my grassroots year. So the first time I said it was in 1995. It was for the bunny hop on a full size mountain bike, which back then was 26-inch. Now it would be a 29er if you said full size mountain bike, but it was 45 and a half inches. So vertical leap, they set up a mini high jump bar, and it was at Mammoth Mountain. So it was always really cool because they'd have a huge crowd just like lining the both sides of the runway, and they'd set up the high jump bar and you just keep going incrementally higher. And I did 45 and a half inches. And then I tied it again in 2000. And then since then, bikes have gotten better, riders have gotten better, the technique has changed quite a bit. So I'm pretty sure guys do like over 50 inches now, like
Yeah, I
for
would
sure.
I would
Over
agree, but
50
that's
inches.
still
Yeah.
that's still some bragging rights for you
Oh,
about
yeah.
on a 26-inch a full mountain bike to get that thing 45 and a half inches off the ground is pretty damn impressive. I
Yeah, that was
couldn't
just a
I couldn't
medium
ever do
Schwinn
it.
homegrown back then. It was just literally just a medium stock bike.
All right.
Yeah.
Um, Jeff, if there was any one piece of advice that you would want to give to some new up and coming rider or up and coming athlete that wants to let's say follow a similar path or try to encourage them to follow this passion, what piece of advice might you give them, or some of the trials and tribulations that you've gone through that you can encourage somebody else that they're going to go through it, but just stick with it? What might some of those things be?
I'd say to try to be realistic with your motivation more than anything, because if you're doing something because you genuinely love it, you've been doing it over 30 years yourself, like the sacrifices that we've both made to get to where we are, there's a lot of times you don't want to get on the bike. There's things you're going to need to miss, whatever. If you're doing it for, nowadays social media clout or something like that, it's not really going to work out. It's not really going to be sustainable. But when you genuinely love doing something, none of the stuff that you have to do feels like a sacrifice. It feels like something you want to do. So I'd say number one, if you want to try to make it a career, you really genuinely have to love it because it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of hard effort. Then beyond that, I would think that you really have to look at um, how you can provide a value to people that you're looking for support from. It can't be about me. You really have to try to identify like what can I do for these brands so that they want to continue making these decisions, because a lot of the partnerships I've had throughout my career have been longer term partnerships. I always try to like make things as long term as possible versus just bouncing around for the next best deal or whatever. And I always try to think about like am I providing value to them, or just basically am I providing value to them? And then the last thing that I talk to a lot of the young kids, like when I'm in California right now doing these assemblies, I'll also meet with a few NICA teams. And I
Okay.
really try to stress to the kids, like, just generally, you want to try to be a good human, like, obviously,
All right.
but is especially in such a small pool like the bike industry, like if you're not nice to people, and you should do it because you want to do it, not because you're doing it for any ulterior motive, but it's a really small industry and you're going to cross paths with a lot of people a lot of times. And when you have people that are on your side because you've been kind to them or nice to them or whatever, like you're going to open doors for yourself versus being, kind of a jerk. So I
The
always talk
the
to younger kids about that. Like, this is a small sport, and if you want to be in it for a long time, you're going to cross paths with the same people multiple times. Like, even as far as the first person that got me on Schwinn, um, 30 something years ago, was the guy who made the decision to get me on Pearl Izumi, which was crucial because when I first got on Reeb, I couldn't do Reeb without Pearl Izumi. It was a 50-50 partnership back then. Like the first year I left Giant, I was Reeb Pearl Izumi, and I couldn't have done it without Pearl Izumi. And that was a relationship that I had formed 30 years ago. And then he just remembered that, he liked what I did or liked what I could do. And it opened another door for me. And had
I
you know,
I
acted
think
different, maybe that opportunity wouldn't have been there.
to summarize what you're saying, I couldn't agree with you more. Number one, be a good human being. That's going to go pretty far. Number two, for me, is I've been very, very fortunate, and this kind of summarizes what you said for your point number two. I've been very fortunate to own some teams, own some my own teams in the past. And the very first thing I tell you is if you win and you're an asshole, I want nothing to do with you. If you get last and I see that passion, that desire, you're well liked in the community, I will take you any day over the guy that's winning and being an asshole. The
That's
bottom
awesome.
line is the bottom line is there is ROI, return on investment. As much as you'd like to believe, nobody is sponsoring you just because they like you. If somebody sponsors you and they're giving you some product, they expect you to sell double the amount of
Yeah,
product that they're giving you. At minimum, you better not cost them anything. So your career has led you to this point, and I think that philosophy of creating of being an asset to a company. Don't just reach your hand out and expect them to give you something. Show what you can actually do for them. You took the burden of developing your own trials rig and going out there and saying, hey, I'm going to solicit everything. I'll put your name on the side. You don't have to do anything other than give me a list of your vendors. But having said all that, Jeff, I know we could go on again and again, and I want you to feel comfortable and feel free that you can use me and Hook, Line, and Shifter at any point to solicit anything that you have to. I'd love to have you back on this show again. Enjoy yourself out in California for the Sea Otter. And I look forward to running into you somewhere on the race scene again. But man, thank you so much for your valuable time today, and enjoy the hell out of the Sea Otter next week. I wish I could be out there, but I only got back from Africa 2 weeks ago. I need a little bit of downtime and a little bit of financial recovery from that trip. But maybe we'll see you over at Nationals in Roanoke or somewhere
yeah.
floating around the nation. But once again, Jeff, man, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate everything that you do for the sport. And again, check out Reeb Cycles, check out Jeff's YouTube channel, Trail Boss, as well as any of his socials. I'll put a link in for every single one of them. But again, Jeff, thank you so much for your
Thank
valuable
you.
time today.
It was great talking.
I look forward to having you back on. Be well, buddy.
All right, take care.
All right, what a cool interview with Jeff, man. That guy is second to none. Again, if you have the opportunity, check out Reeb Cycles. They're handmade bikes. Those are the ones he's been on for a few years. Very, very beautiful, beautiful bikes. Candade.org. If you have the ability to donate, that's another great organization that gives back. Jeff has been a big role in that, but check out Candade.org and Jeff's YouTube channel, Jeff Lenosky, Lenosky, Jeff Lenosky Trail Boss. Amazing videos he's got out there too. Very, very talented. The shit that he's riding, whew, pretty amazing. Again, I appreciate Jeff taking his time, and hopefully you guys enjoyed that interview and you get a chance to see a little bit about his background and where Jeff's successes came from. I like in the interview where we talked a little bit about Xeroxing. We both dated ourselves there, but when he said he was Xeroxing his resume to try and go out and get sponsors, that's old school. That's old school, man. All right, this past weekend we had the Coconut Cup final up at Quiet Waters Park. Quiet Waters Park is in Deerfield Beach, approximately 6.5 miles of course. Those volunteers just absolutely killed it. The course was so fun, so fast. So the experts had to do 4 laps, sport had to do 3, and base had to do 2. Like I said, it was the Coconut Cup final, 7-round series that runs from 2025 and wraps up in this past weekend in 2026. Something significant happened in this that has never happened to me before. My guys, the 19 to 39-year-old overall went to Marco Carey, one of my key training partners that we ride a lot together. So that's 19 to 39. 40 to 49. Julio Gomez, another one of my key training partners. 40 to 49. Julio got the overall for the series. In the 50 to 59, I picked up another Coconut Cup series overall win. And then in the 60 plus, Robert Lucas, another one of my training partners, got himself the win also. So 19 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and 60 plus in the expert category. We had that McCarty name on the top step of the podium. Very, very cool moment for me. Also, Annabelle Purvis, she got herself 2 of the junior and the kids Coconut Cup 25-26 jerseys. Amazing performance from her also. Next year she's got to move up and working hard. She's another one of my my clients. Why do I think this is so significant or means so much to me? I know I've said in my episodes before, training partners. The key to success is have good, if not great, training partners that are going to hold you accountable every single day of the week. Every day of the week, except Sunday, unless I'm racing. 5 o'clock in the morning, I've got my guys out there training with me. How do you make something like this happen? If you don't have it in your community, step up. Be the one that's gonna try and lead a group of people. What I attribute a little bit of my guys' success to is that when they're ready to ride, the very first thing that happens is they pick up the phone, say, "Bob, you riding tomorrow?" And before I even have a chance to think about it, the answer is yes. Why? Because then I know at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, I don't want to let anybody down. So I'm gonna be there. We have group rides, or I have group rides Monday morning, Monday night, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, Thursday night, Friday morning, and Saturday morning. In these group rides, I have as many as 40 people that show up, and in some days it might just be myself. That's just the nature of how it goes. But the second there's 1, 2, or 3 people there, especially these my key training partners, it's time to go. There is never a dull moment with us. I had a great conversation with somebody about a week ago, and they were talking about one of my workouts. It's called Moto Monday. Moto Monday is a 5:30 workout that I lay out a particular course. The course is generally about 8 minutes long, and we wind up doing about 10 laps of it. It's about a 75-minute workout. Conversation I had, somebody said to me, "Hey, so do you guys, do you go, kind of easy on the first lap? Do you go hard on the first lap and then take it easy on the next one and then go hard again?" I go, "What are you kidding me? Do you see these guys that I'm training with? We want to kill each other. Every single week we want to kill each other, but I'll tell you what, it makes us better, because no matter how you're feeling that day, you're going to be surrounded by some guys that want to go. So key to your personal success, key to my success, and key to my guys' success is have really good training partners and accountability partners. Keep in mind, there is no downtime. You want to be successful, there is no downtime. You have to push. And as I started the show today, you have to fight what's happening between your ears. What's happening between your ears is going to dictate a lot about what you're doing. Remember what I said with the Cape Epic? What we did yesterday has no bearing on what we're doing today, and what we're going to do tomorrow is no factor of what we're going to do today either. We're in the moment and we're ready to go. You give your best you can every single day. Accountability partners. Can't go wrong with good accountability partners. Don't have them? Find some. Start the group, but you got to be consistent. If you want to lead a group, you have to be consistent. A strong leader is going to give you strong followers, and it's going to give you results like this, where you sweep every one of the expert categories for the Coconut Cup. So congratulations to all of my guys and Annabelle for getting herself a title also. As far as the rest of the categories, we got XC2 Sport. Benny Hernandez got himself the win, got himself the overall in that category. XC2 Sport 40 plus, Doug Bastros got himself the win there. Doug, guess where you're headed in September? Welcome to Expert, as well as second and third place. All these sport people, welcome to Expert in September. 50 plus, Alex Duran. XC2, congrats. Welcome to 50 plus Expert. Welcome to my category. Who else do we have? XC1 Women. Patricia Doring got herself another Coconut Cup. I know Patty has won a few of these, as well as there's an episode last year. You can check that out where I had Patty on the show. Really, really talented women. So congratulations to her. Gabrielle, just an honorable mention. She got athlete, up and coming athlete or best athlete. She got second place to Patty overall in the Coconut Cup series. She's another really talented girl that's going to have a great career in front of her. XC2 Sport Women, Jennifer Nunez got the win there. And XC3 Base, Mateo got the win there, got the overall. Base 40 plus, Victor. Base 50 plus, Ronaldo. Ronaldo's another one of my guys. Ronaldo, out. I know I've said this one to you before. Out. You are out of the base category. No more. Come up to sport for a year or two, and then get your ass up to the expert category. No more hanging around. No more hanging around base, buddy. Sorry. Clicking off that extra lap. Base only has to do 2 laps. Guess what? You're stepping into 3. Clydesdale Lewis got the win there. Junior under 19, Emmanuel. Base 60 plus, Javier. Junior under 15, Kamar. Base women, Jennifer Milan. Junior women under 19, Chloe got the win there. I think her name has been up there before. Under 13, Annabelle. Way to go. You could see her in that picture with us. So that's it. That's the overall standings, the winners for the overall Coconut Cup Series for 25 and 26. If you have the opportunity to get down to Deerfield Beach, I highly recommend checking out Quiet Waters Park. We unfortunately here, Markham Park is my park, but because of the weather we have, Markham Park does close quite frequently because it floods quite easily. Quiet Water Park never closes. Quiet Waters is a park that holds up very well in the rain. So if you have the opportunity, check it out. Quiet Waters Park. Amazing volunteers there also. It's they spend a lot of money and a lot of time making that park as good actually as it is. So once again, Gone Riding, thank you for putting on another amazing series, the 25-26 Coconut Cup Series. And Gone Riding also has the FLE, which is going on during the summer, the Gravel Grinder, Hump Day Hustle. Check out their website, goneriding.com, if you want to pick up an event throughout the summer. And then we are looking forward to seeing you guys, Gone Riding, me, looking forward to seeing you guys in September in Tallahassee for the start of the 26th Florida State Championship Series. This will actually be number 32 or number 33 for me, somewhere around there of a Florida State Series. Whew. Let's do it. Let's do it. I hit my 600th mountain bike race when I was in Africa. Let's finish out the year with 625 and then keep plugging away and trying to get to that number 700. All right, what do we got coming up next week? Next week, I will have the results from the Hammerhead. Gone Riding's Hammerhead, 25, 50, or 75-mile race. It's a 25-mile loop. Super long loop. Great event. It's another round of the Florida Endurance Series, the FLE Series. I'm not sure which one it is. Maybe round 4 of the FLE Series. I will have another surprise guest on for us. I will have the results from Stage 4 and Stage 5. Especially Stage 5, the Queen Stage. Stay tuned for that one, because that one, I lost my shit. I had enough. I was ready to throw my bike off the mountain. And this is a hard one. I lost somebody this week. A friend. An amazing friend. Chris, we love you. I know you're looking down, saying, what the hell are you doing, Bob? Shut up. But we lost an amazing friend. Cherish your friends. Cherish your family. Live in the moment, because you never know if tomorrow's coming. Once again, I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for supporting my sponsors, Orchist Technologies, ESI Grips, U-Cycling, MASH Mobile Vet, POC Helmets, Envy Wheels, Pirelli Tires, and Absolute Black. Once again, have another great training week, and I look forward to talking with you guys next week again. If you like the channel, please click that like button, subscribe, but most of all, share. I'm working hard, trying to get some information out there, as well as if you have any questions for me, you can email me at mtbcoachbob@gmail. mtbcoachbob@gmail. Any questions about the show, any topics you want me to cover, any questions that you have whatsoever, I will be more than happy to cover. Once again, Chris Sharp, we love you. We miss you. You'll be cherished by all. Have another great training week. Be well.